Happy 4th of July, fellow Americans who happen to be watching this movie review. Hopefully I have it up by 4th of July. I'm cutting it close. I'm actually filming it on 4th of July. But one movie that didn't come out 4th of July weekend, which could have easily done so, thankfully it didn't, because it would have made for a really bad, disappointing 4th of July. I'm talking about Independence Day Resurgence. Oh, God. So, Independence Day Resurgence is the sequel to Independence Day, though you might not think it because it's a very different type of movie, or at least it doesn't seem like Independence Day to me. Anyway, 20 years have passed since the initial attack, since the aliens attacked Earth, and now we've used that technology of the downed ships in order to advance our technology. We've advanced our technology, we've accomplished world peace. Everyone is coexisting together completely, nicely, and like I said, world peace. And we've had 20 years to prepare for another alien attack. Well, guess what? People are starting to have visions, psychic visions of symbols and possible aliens coming back to Earth. Well, guess what? The aliens come back to Earth in a bigger, more superior ship.
That is definitely bigger than the last one.
The weapons we've been developing for 20 years is ineffective, and so now we have an Independence Day movie of us trying to attack and survive and destroy the alien ship. Okay, first off, it was a very disappointing film for me, but not disappointing in it's a bad movie, disappointing in the fact that it's pretty average, and because I like Independence Day so much, I really enjoy it, and even countless times of watching it, I don't feel like it's a guilty pleasure of mine. I genuinely like it, and I didn't find it as cheesy as Independence Day 2, or Independence Day Resurgence. But because I really like it, it's very average, and so that's very disappointing. But because it's average, it's not going to get an overly bad score. What did I like about it? I thought most of the characters were fine. They were acceptable. They weren't great. They weren't bad, they were just acceptable. Some annoyed the hell out of me, but not all of them. Almost all of them felt like acceptable characters for a dumb, fun popcorn movie. The overall story was acceptable. There's a lot of retreads of Independence Day, even though it doesn't feel like the same essence of Independence Day because they go over the top to the point where it looks like almost any other new Roland Emmerich film like 2012 or any of those other movies. Even though the action is repetitive, especially when they're being chased and it seems like all the action delves into, okay, we gotta get under something, or we gotta escape this falling debris, we gotta escape the natural disaster, or in this case the alien attack. Even though it is repetitive, I can see some dumb fun to be had with it. And there are some interesting things within the movie that is okay and acceptable. So I think overall the movie is acceptable, but very disappointing. But I think the main issue I have with the film, the thing that irked me the most out of Independence Day Resurgence, is the overabundance, overcrowdedness of all the major characters in this film. There is a lot. Okay, I guess we should just delve into some of the characters. I thought Jeff Goldblum's returning character was fine. He did have a little bit of light humor to him, and he seemed to be having the most fun. Bill Pullman is back as the ex-president, who's now walking on a cane and going a little bit insane, because he sees psychic visions, and yeah, I think he's okay, but I can see how he can be one of the more disappointing returning characters. Vivica A. Fox is back as Jasmine, and she's pretty underutilized. She really is actually only in maybe 2-3 scenes at the most. I don't want to go too spoiler heavy, but yeah, there's nothing to that character right now. Judd Hirsch is back as David's father, and honestly, he was far more annoying than he was in the first film. In the first film, he was a good character. I liked him. He was funny. And for some reason, he still plays the same character in this one, but for some reason, he didn't work. And I think it's because the film literally makes him survive anything. Like, he's one of those characters in a Roland Emmerich movie that is going through disaster after disaster, and you think, okay, this guy should be dead by now. And you think he's gonna die, but then it's like, oh, nope, he's miraculously saved. And then his storyline becomes completely useless. But they keep coming back to him to have a little bit of light humor, to have a little bit of the same jokes as the first one. Such as him driving really slowly. Yeah, that's used again. I think it was funny the first time. Not funny the second time, though. And I'm kind of pissed off with his storyline because they introduce even more characters into the film. Almost over halfway through the film, they're still introducing characters, and it's because of his storyline. And there are even more useless side characters that they try to give backstory to. They try to put emotion into them because, oh, they're orphans, but it's just... Okay, that is a running theme through this movie, but sometimes it gets really annoying. Mainly when they're trying to introduce even more side characters in an overly crowded movie. I'm probably going to spend almost half my review just talking about the characters in this movie. There's so much. Miyaka Monroe, she plays the president's daughter instead of the actress that originally played her, who apparently is still an actress, so why isn't she in this one? I've liked her in other movies, but in this movie she's just sort of there. I don't know. I mean, she's Liam Hemsworth's girlfriend in the movie. Also, she's worried about her dad, and she takes care of him instead of being a fighter pilot, which she's really good at, and so she eventually becomes a fighter pilot again, and... I mean, it's acceptable, but this is one of those things that this movie does. It tries to give backstory, tries to flesh out all these different characters, but they try to do it with so many characters that by the time you actually see all these fleshing out of characters and giving them character arcs and stuff, and how similar almost all of them seem to be, or as basic as they all seem to be, then it almost makes you not really care about the characters. At least for me, I don't know, it's just one of those odd occurrences in a movie where there's just so many characters, so many character arcs, so many people that are supposed to get importance. Why don't you make some of these just side characters, just like the first one did? Because the first one focused on a few people having character arcs, a few people having backstories. Far less people than in Independence Day Resurgence. While there's other people that are stereotypical characters, that are one-dimensional, that can be the side characters and still be acceptable side characters. This movie tries to throw all of its side characters and develop them all, and it just becomes overbearing. Liam Hemsworth's character is okay for this series. I don't find him annoying, I don't find him particularly great, but he seems to be an acceptable hero for this kind of movie. Jesse T. Usher now plays the grown-up kid from the first one, you know, Vivica A. Fox's kid in the first one. And now he's a fighter pilot too. Almost every single person is a fighter pilot in this movie. Or at least all the big main new characters. And he just doesn't have the charisma that Will Smith had in the first film, and so he's trying to be the replacement of Will Smith's character, because Will Smith's character is dead and they give no reason why and don't try to explain why. They also don't try to explain why Jeff Goldblum's character isn't with the love interest or the ex-wife, or they get back together. I mean, there's hints of them possibly getting back together in the first one, but they're like, oh, it wasn't explicitly explained, so let's just have that forgotten completely in the second one. Just like how a character that was clearly dead in the first one, but because they didn't say he was dead, and they didn't have the check the pulse and shake the head, because they didn't do that specifically, no, he's in a coma. He's in a coma instead of being dead. And so now he's back in this one as an annoying character. If you're wondering who I'm talking about, it's the Brent Spiner character. If you think I'm spending too much on main characters in this film, I've only mentioned half of them. Probably only half of them in this film. There's Liam Hemsworth's partner, co-pilot, that is annoying at the very beginning of the film, but then becomes acceptable and feels like a decent character by the end of it. There's also an Asian pilot who's one of the elite fighter, world fighter. There's like 7 fighter pilots, and they're all across the world, and she's the Chinese one. There's her. She becomes a main character as well, who Liam Hemsworth's co-pilot is in love with, and so there's a relationship between them. There's also a character named Floyd who's hanging around Jeff Goldblum at the very beginning to audit him or something. It's never quite fully explained. Or at least they outwardly explain it in such a way that is completely forgettable by the end of the film. He's just sort of there as the average guy that doesn't know how to do anything and becomes badass by the end of it, but he's such an annoying character that you hate him becoming a badass, and then it's just... He's a bumbling idiot throughout the whole movie, but then becomes a badass, kills aliens, and you're supposed to root for him, even though he's been annoying the entire time. There's also the son of an African warlord who knows how to kill aliens with machetes. There's also the new president, who's a female president, who becomes the Bill Pullman of this movie for a while. There's also William Fichtner, who is a general in this movie. And there's also the side character for Brent Spiner, who's another lab person who's been taking care of him while he was in a coma. There's a ton of characters, and they're all supposed to be important for the film. They're so important to the film, apparently, that the film doesn't have the balls to kill off half of the characters. Do you remember when there was an overabundance of side characters in the first film? Yeah, almost all the main characters had at least one side character that you're supposed to feel, oh, this is a coworker, this is someone they're related to, or this is someone that they care about, this is a friend. And basically these people are used as a tool in order for us to care a little bit more about the initial attack. Because what happens to these side characters at the first one? They all die in the first act of the film. Whether from the initial explosion, from the initial dogfight against the first mothership. Basically, they're used to gain some sympathy for the humans that are being attacked and destroyed and killed mercilessly. And they put some faces to the attacks when they happen, so it's not just buildings exploding, you're actually seeing people die, and you can put a face to the attacks. In Independence Day Resurgence, no, they're not going to do that. They're not going to have side characters. They're going to try to have fully fleshed out characters throughout the entire film. So you have like 20 people in the film, and still almost 20 people by the end of the film. Do you want to know how many people initially die in the first attack of Independence Day Resurgence? Well, when I'm talking about main characters or side characters of these main characters, in the first one, there was at least 3, maybe 4, maybe even more than that. In Independence Day Resurgence, 2. 1, and another one is made to look like that person died, only for us to later reveal that that person's not dead and he's still alive. But 2 people die. And they're used as tools as a more of a theme of parents of characters dying. Yeah, this movie has a theme of parents dying and orphans, almost similar to Warcraft, except it's not about orphans, it's more about broken families, because it's not just the parent dying, sometimes it's the kid. And even during the initial attacks, when they destroy buildings and destroy the world, they don't do the Independence Day route where they show random extras and random citizens before the attack happens. In Independence Day, it showed people as they're gawking and looking at the mothership before it destroys things. It shows faces of extras, even though they're not particularly important to the film. They show victims, so when the attack happens, you can put a face to the victims and it shows a little bit more clearer, and it's not just buildings being destroyed. You see a little bit more of people dying as well. In Independence Day Resurgence, only does it one time. Out of all the cities and all the destruction that's happening, it does it one time. Actually, you know what? There's even more characters. I forgot to mention. There's a whole ship of people that were excavating a ship underwater, and they happen to end up being at the point where the mothership is extracting resources from the Earth. And so well, it's more than that. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a little more than that. But they're there, and so they're going to... And so they basically become the people that give information to our heroes on what's going on in there. So they become an important character as well. And there's about 6 of those people. I mean, they pretty much combine into one character, but there's 6 of them. Along with the orphan kids that Judd Hirsch finds. Bus full of them. Plus the 3 he initially finds, or the 3 that discover him. Too many characters! But anyway, I also didn't like the whole gravity thing. Yeah, it's shown in the trailer. It goes so over the top and ridiculous. It's one of those movies where it's like, oh, we'll just make it bigger and better. Just like in any other Roland Emmerich film, just like any Michael Bay film, they're just like, okay, we'll just make it bigger, badder, more destructive, and that will make it a better sequel. And that's fine if it's entertaining enough, if the characters are acceptable enough, if the story is okay, then fine, you can do that way, but don't make that the crutch. This time we see buildings being lifted up because the spaceship has gravity, and then once the spaceship stops, all these buildings and cars and everything just cascades down on other cities, and so you have landmarks falling on top of landmarks being destroyed. And this movie feels and looks like it goes the 2012 route. You know, that kind of action where in 2012 all the action sequences was basically them running from natural disasters, or maybe unnatural disasters, right? And so a lot of the action, at least during the initial attack, feels just like 2012 as they're running away from a natural disaster. The only difference is it's buildings falling down. And it has that 2012 CGI look of destruction where it's just an overabundance to the point where it becomes dull and meaningless and just there's no investment in it whatsoever. It's just, I don't know, it tries to build up these stakes with these spaceship being even larger and more destruction happening, but because the characters are so dull and lifeless in this one, feels like there's no stakes at all. It's also fast-paced as hell, just like 2012, where it's just run, 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 go, 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 keep going, action, 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 action. It doesn't stop. It slows down initially, but once that initial slowdown stops, it just keeps going. Except for maybe a few brief moments. In Independence Day, there was a nice balance of action and slowing down to build up characters and action and dealing with the aliens. It felt like a natural pace. This one is a breakneck speed, and despite it being a breakneck speed, it also feels a little boring and hollow. And of course, the aliens get a CGI makeover in this film, and I really wasn't a fan of it. Now look, I understand, CGI, that's fine. But there's just something about the CGI look in this one that looks a little too cartoony, that looks a little wrong, especially when it can look really good, practically, like the first one did. But then there's one alien that I know had to go the CGI route, so maybe they made the other one CGI because they knew they had to do that one CGI. And that is keeping track with the bigger, better sort of, this is how we make a sequel. There's a queen alien. I don't feel like this is actually spoiling it for you because they did reveal it in one of the TV spots and several other trailers that I've seen. Unfortunately, I had seen it after all these TV spots started happening. Because apparently the TV spots thought, oh, you must have seen Independence Day Resurgence already. Well, let me show you images that would be spoiler-filled because we want you to see it again. But I haven't seen it yet. Actually, I think it happened during the day it was released. It might have been that That might have been the first time I saw the TV spot the day it was released. And when I saw the TV spot and I saw a giant alien, I just thought, oh my God, that can't be good. Thankfully, it was a lot better than I expected it to be. If you went into Independence Day Resurgence not knowing about the giant alien and then finally seeing the giant alien, I think I can understand you thinking, oh my God, that is awful. But fortunately, I did see the giant alien in these TV spots. And so I was already going in thinking, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. How are they going to introduce a giant alien? What the heck is going on? What are they thinking? But then when they're introduced and it's like, oh, it's a queen alien, and oh, these aliens have a hive mind, just like aliens from Aliens and other alien movies. And so it makes sense that she's a bigger queen, so she's giant. And so there's a giant alien. I mean, it was acceptable. It was kind of fun and entertaining. But I also was hating that scene because, one, there's a death that becomes completely unnecessary and feels like it's completely meaningless. And two, it also has a bus full of school children running away from a giant alien when the bus full of school children probably shouldn't have been in the movie in the first place. Oh, God. There's deaths in this movie where it doesn't seem like it's trying to pull for a meaningful death. On paper, it should be, because it seems like it's important for these main characters to have this person die. But the way it's executed doesn't feel like it's important. It doesn't try to give it its all to really punch that emotional impact of a character dying. The one frickin' time this movie does try its all to show to have the sad music, to try to have the sad dialogue, to try to really make a death seem really sad and impactful. They do it for the frickin' side character that has no character arc, no real story to him, is just there just to be there. That's when I got really pissed, because it's the one character out of all the deaths in this movie, it's the one character that it's like, I don't give a crap about him at all. And that's the one time the movie tries to give it its all to try to make an important, very sad, sacrificial death scene over all the other ones. And it's the last human death scene in the movie, so if you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure you probably know it already, but if you're still unclear, it's the last human that dies in the film. Even though there's a lot of things I don't like about it, even though it is aggravating and disappointing, it's still slightly acceptable for an average blockbuster popcorn flick that you can turn your brain off. Basically, if you don't care about story, if you don't care about characters, you just want a fun time, and you don't care about Independence Day, then you might like this movie. You might. I think what really sucks, though, is it doesn't feel like it has the essence of Independence Day, and I think a lot of sequels that have several years between them feel that way. It almost feels like a spin-off with some of the characters, or a fan fiction, rather than something that has the essence and feels like a true sequel to the first film. And the fact that they want another one out of this, the movie literally cuts off into complete sequel bait. And I could see it as the third act began rolling around, because they gave hints of a bigger world, of a bigger intergalactic war, of a bigger possible trilogy. So I could see it coming, but it just, the way it cut off too, is just aggravating. despite me giving this really, really negative review for Independence Day Resurgence, I think there's just enough to really enjoy it if you don't really care about anything other than action and just to have a fun time. I'm going to give Independence Day Resurgence, honestly, 3 stars. It is bad, but it's average. And I think that's what's the most disappointing for most people, because if you really like Independence Day and the sequel is just simply average, you're going to think it's way worse than it actually is. And so yes, I gave a lot of hate. I gave a lot of negative to it, but I still recognize it as a very average film, which ultimately is very disappointing. Because I liked Independence Day. And so when the sequel's an average film, it's really disappointing. So have you seen Independence Day Resurgence? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my movie reviews of 2015 and 2016. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.